One of the greatest gifts we can give each other is just listening to our stories. Today, I wanted to do something a little different. Many of you know me because I spend my days talking about grief and helping others navigate loss. But before I did any of those things, I was just a son. My mom is 91 years old. Over the course of her life, she's experienced losses that have shaped who she is, from losing her father when she was just a teenager to losing my dad after more than 65 years together. I realized that while I've spent years talking to thousands of grieving people, I've never really sat down and asked my own mother what grief has taught her. So today, we're just going to have a conversation. Mom, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Well, I'm glad to help you, Gary.
Let's go all the way back to when you were a teenager. How old were you when your dad died?
I was only 15 years old when my dad died.
What do you remember most about him?
I just remember he was such a loving, caring dad. I even just talking about it now is making me cry.
That's okay.
Yeah. I just loved him to death. And both my parents were immigrants. They came to this country and made a wonderful living. And I missed him a lot. And I knew my mother missed him a lot.
What do you remember the most about the day he died?
The day he died, we knew he was sick. He had a stroke. And my uncle was taking care of me. And my uncle came down and he said, you got to go home and your dad passed away. And I said, oh, my dad passed away? He says, yeah, he's not going to be home when you go, but you still have your mother and you'll still have your brother. And I said, okay. And I didn't even really know what death was about at that time, just a teenager. Everything was happy and I was, just a happy teenager. And then I went home and my dad was gone. And it was such a sad day. And in those days, years ago, when he did pass away, they had the body in the living room.
Mm.
And, you had to look at that living room after you came home, and he wasn't there anymore. And I remember going in the closet and smelling his clothes. I knew he smoked, and it was hard. But I had a loving, caring mother and an older brother, 5 years older, who took care of me. And we made the best of the life that we could at that point.
Yeah. And so, what was grief like back then? Like, did
Nobody
people talk about it?
No, nobody talked about it. It happened, and I remember one of the lines in your book, Gary, and the casserole stopped coming, and the people stopped coming, and everybody went back to their own lives,
Yeah.
as they know them. And our lives had changed tremendously, Had a mother who didn't speak English, had a brother who was in college, and it was rough. But, we made it. We made it.
So do you think back then people were more uncomfortable talking about grief than they are now?
Nobody talked about grief in those days. They just didn't. It
Yeah.
just happened, and you worked
You were supposed to
around
get
it,
over it.
and you were just supposed to get over it. And and nobody gets over it. Ever. Look at me now, I'm 91, I'm still crying. So nobody really gets over it, but you learn to live around it.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you think losing your dad at such a young age changed the way the person you became as you got older? Like not growing up not having a dad?
I think it did because I think it made me more compassionate about people when they did have problems at that point.
So Mom, next week will be 5 years since Dad died.
Gonna cry again. Yeah.
After spending so much of your life together with Dad, what's been the hardest part?
Just sitting in this living room right now, which is, just a handicapped accessible house that they made for him to come home to. I look at where he sat, and that makes me sad.
So what do you miss the most?
The love and the care and how he took care of me all those years. In our culture, the man was the boss, and the wife just did what he wanted to do, what he wanted her to do. And he was just a loving, caring dad. And husband, a wonderful husband.
So when do you still feel the closest to Dad? I know you tell me all the time about seeing the birds.
I just saw one this morning when you told me what we were going to do. I was doing the dishes, and for some reason, no matter when I'm sad or when things happen, the first thing that happened was you suggested I go to a grief meeting. And I walked out, and I've never seen a cuddle in my whole life. I live near the water. The water's right in front of my house here. And there was a cardinal sitting on a wire white at the black wire, as you see there. And I thought, wow, that's strange because I always thought people used to talk about cardinals and they reminded them of someone who passed away. And that was my first grief meeting, you know. Then after that, I said, I never even liked birds because my brother used to scare me with feathers that came out of our pillows in those days. And I was like, I don't even like birds, but that's a pretty bird. And ever since then, the birds have been assigned to me. A blackbird will come when I need it. I had a grief in Florida, in my Florida house. I had a grief. Your brother made a grief thing with Dad's, um,
Like a marker for dad.
yeah, like a stone, and he
Mm.
put the date he lived in, the day he died. And I was sat there the first day I was down there. We did 30 years in Florida for the winters, and a bird came and walked right across. A blackbird came right across and walked right over his marker. And I
Wow.
thought there is something after life
Yeah.
to me that showed me. And ever since then, I take pictures of birds when I see them.
So, Mom, you have experienced different losses at different stages in your life. You lost your dad when you were really young, and then you lost my dad when you were older. What was the difference between those losses? Do you feel like there was a difference between losing like a parent and losing a
I
spouse?
think that losing a parent, everybody expects that. I don't think you think too much about losing your husband or your children, you know, though I think those are different kinds of losses at different times of your life. That's what I think about.
So, do you think grief has changed over the years?
I think grief now is talked more about than it was years ago.
More out in the
More
open?
out in the open that wasn't before.
So, do
You
you
know,
feel like you had more support when dad died than you did when your father died years ago?
well, only because you changed your life and you turned into who you are. So, you know, you've been a big help to me. You know,
So, what's helped you keep going since dad died?
uh, my husband always loved people. He was very social. I miss his talking. You know, and I just miss everything about him. I just miss everything about him. So every day is a different day, and I just kind of, and no matter how many people are around you, Gary, there's days that you just still feel alone. You can have a group and they leave, but you're still alone. And that's the part of
You
grief
come
that's
home
hard.
to the empty house.
You come home to the empty house, the empty chair, the empty bed, the empty laughing, the empty talking. Those are all the losses you have when you have a spouse for so long. You
So,
know,
if someone is watching this today, what would you want them to know?
I want them to know that it never goes away. I want them to know that it gets softer as you go along, and beautiful things happen along the way. That for some reason God wants you to be here during that time.
So, Mom, what do you hope people will remember about Dad?
Uh, you know, I remember the things that people remember him and say his name. I had a friend next door who lost her daughter, and I never mentioned her name because I didn't want her to cry. But you know what? She thought about her every day. And then I went to all my grief classes, as I did when I first started with Dad, and they said that we want to hear their name, you know. And I went down to took a walk with my walker down the beach the other day, and one of the fellows down there said, you know, your husband was one of the nicest men on this beach.
It was good to hear that, right?
And I started to cry, and I think the guy felt bad that I said that. And I said, you know, I just thought everybody forgot him. And that's why I say I love it when people mention his name. And I felt so bad when Peggy lost her daughter that I never mentioned her name. So now that grief is more out there, I think that's a great thing that people don't forget the people that are there. And it's okay to say their names.
Yeah. So, Mom, what do you hope your grandchildren and your great grandchildren remember about the life that you and Dad had together?
Oh my God. They all remember him. And you know, that makes me feel so good. They mention his name all the time. They mention about the fun they had out on the boat with him. They mention everything, you know, and my granddaughters adored him.
Does
You
it
know,
make you does it make you feel sad that Dad's missing out on them growing up?
every day, every minute, every moment of my life. I, I wish that, you know, they knew how many people you help and what you're doing. You know, that's the thing that keeps me going. I don't even want to be here anymore. And I'm here because everybody's doing so well in my family, and they're all loving and caring. You know,
So, so Mom, when you look back over your 91 years, what has love taught you?
love has taught me to be loving and caring and compassionate, not judgmental about people, not to talk about people, and just to love them and to support them in anything they need to do, and just be there for them.
I think that's probably the biggest lesson that grief teaches us, that love doesn't end when someone dies.
That's right, Gary. That's so, so true. Believe me.
I hope today's conversation reminds you that every person carries a story. Sometimes the people closest to us have lived through things we've never really asked them about. If you're fortunate enough to still have a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, or someone from an older generation in your life, consider asking them about the people they have loved and lost. One day, those stories won't be available to us anymore. Mom, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Oh, you're welcome, Gary. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. And to anyone watching, thank you for letting us share a little piece of our family story. Remember, we're all just walking each other home.
Oh, yeah.